Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining the channel today. I'm Dane, your host. Hope you're doing well wherever you may find yourselves. Today is episode 19 in my little mini-series called Back to Back, the greatest album pairs of all time. And before we dive into today's band of choice, I want to talk about, in case you're new to the mini-series or new to the channel, what do I think the qualifications are for being considered the greatest album pairs of all time. Number one, they must be back-to-back in the discography. That's for the most part fairly easy to find. Next, they must complement one another in some way or ways. Another way of saying that is that they're companion albums. They have that same vibe, feel, atmosphere, that sort of thing. Next, the second one, chronologically speaking, anywhere in the discography must pick up where the previous one in front of it left off. They could have been a double album. And finally, they must be considered seminal works. So it's with great pleasure that I talk about this particular band today, because this is one that I think many of you who follow the channel have been going, boy, I hope he talks about this band. I hope he talks about these two albums by them. I am, and I could have done them at any point, but I really wanted to save them for one of the last 5 or 6 because they're one of the most special bands to me, and they are my favorite band of all time. And so we're talking about Canada, we're talking about Rush, and so I'm so excited, Farewell to Kings, and of course the follow-up to that is Hemispheres. And both of these were recorded in Rockfield, Wales. One difference is that Hemispheres, while recorded also in Wales, in Rockfield, they did have to go back to Trident Studios to touch up some things, because this was a very difficult album for them to create, which made the band rethink things and go into different waters for the next 2 albums, and then they really change after that. So let's start with Farewell to Kings. I just recently got this on vinyl because I'm gonna hang it up over there somewhere with another album, and I bought the album art frames to put them in and hang them up. I can't wait to do that. Probably do this in a couple days. Here's the back of the album. With the song. I love the Fallen King with his puppet strings holding things, whatever these are called, right, from the marionette. Lots of things you can interpret from the cover of this album, which I won't go into today, maybe in a separate video. I could talk about the album cover alone as an artistic piece and how the back is as well. Not so much for Hemispheres, although I could, but I prefer the album artwork on the other one, rather, Farewell to Kings, that is. And so let's dive into this album now. So the title track opens, you only have 6 songs, but the title track of Farewell to Kings opens this, and what a great way to open the album. You have this wonderful acoustic intro. It's pastoral. It also has this medieval flavor or quality to it. I'm not the only fan to do that. Many critics as well have talked about how this has a medieval sound to it. Not the whole album, but in places. 3 of the 6 songs, I would argue, if not more, you have this feel about, because of the song lyrics and the theme as well, about kings and queens and the court, right, and jesters and that sort of thing. You have these elegant keys that come in after the pastoral acoustic bit, and then you get some heavy drums that come in, that kick in with heavy guitar that follow that, and the heavy guitar has this almost ominous feeling about it. And then you have this wonderful riff from Alex. The vocals are dynamite, and then the drums from Neil are just fantastic. You have the theme lyrically of corruption, hatred, cruelty, indifference. You have the quote, demons dressed in kingly guise, beating down the multitude and scoffing at the wise. The sword and sorcery kind of thing, because there's this movie called The Sword and the Sorcerer. I don't know which came first. I want to say the album did, but it's a great fantasy movie where an actual demon dresses up in the disguise of a mortal king, and then he reveals himself later. It's just great. So it makes me think of that as well. And of course, this song we can relate to, because the corruption that exists back then during the time this album was made, and of course during the Middle Ages, which we have the falling away of with the rise of big cities, right, in the background, is still prevalent today, unfortunately. So the quote, demons dressed in kingly guise, has a relevant metaphor to today's society, right? And then you have the whoa part toward the end where Geddy sings, and Geddy sings wonderfully on these two albums, and that high register that we know and love from Geddy, right? And so you have that, can't we find the minds that made us strong, somewhere in the middle of the song. And then you have that great bass solo. Then you have that soaring guitar. It's just amazing. And then after that soaring guitar begins the true solo of this piece. It's unlike anything Alex has ever done. And then the bass underneath that guitar solo from Alex and the drums from Neil under that as well is just fabulous. And then you have that stop, start that we love from Rush, right? And then another solo from Alex, and then the chorus returns. And then the last two lines, which I'll read because they're so momentous and they're leading up and foreshadowing a later song on this album. I almost pulled the vinyl out for this, but I'm not gonna do that. So the end of the song reads, can't we find the minds to lead us closer to the heart? So that's foreshadowing the song, of course, Closer to the Heart. So in many ways you can think of Closer to the Heart as a part two of the song. This is the negative, the corruption, and the kings who are really demons, make of that what you will, right? And then Close to the Heart is more pedantic and instructive, how to live a good life, that sort of thing. But we'll come to that. So I think of these two as companion pieces. It picks up in a way where Farewell to Kings left off. It's the good part of the message, if you will, that stems over from Farewell to Kings. All right, next we get track 2. Rick Beato has claimed this to be his favorite Rush song of all time, and what makes this song great. If you're not familiar with his channel, I would really advise that you check him out. I think it's just called Rick Beato, Beato. He's wonderful. He gets really into the technical sides of music. Alex is playing a sus chord here and an F sharp, and I'm not that kind of person, but he's just fabulous. I love what he does. He's a gift from God in the sense, and his passion for music and that sort of thing. Anyway, so Xanadu. The title comes from the Coleridge poem Kubla Khan, and Kubla Khan, a character mentioned in this poem/song, right? And this is a headphone song. I would argue this whole album is a headphone song, but if you had to pick ones that are the clear-cut winners, it would be a Farewell to Kings, Xanadu, and Cygnus X1, the closing track. So this song opens up, as you know, with that Moog Taurus pedal hum, right? It's fabulous. You have that heavy pastoral sound that, well, it makes you think of I'll say this, it has a heavy pastoral feel, if that's an actual term. It's pastoral, but there's no acoustic here. It's just a heaviness to that pastoral vibe this whole album gives from start to finish, or for most of the album, if you will. Then you get some wood blocks and chimes and all sorts from Neil. This is where, and you get birds chirping. So someone decided, hey, let's sample the birds fluttering and chirping in the background. Morning is coming, that sort of thing. This is, if you know anything about Rush, and because you're a Rush fan, right? You know that this is where Neil, especially the whole band really, but Neil pulled out all the stops, pulled out the kitchen sink and everything for this album. And then if you think that he pulled out the kitchen sink and everything for this album, the next album, Hemispheres, he pulls out 2 more surprises. He pulls out the timpani and the gong. He doesn't do that here, but it's close to having all the stops, right? So just fabulous. And of course, many have compared this album and the next to Rush's Genesis phase, because they were listening to Genesis at this point. And there's a certain Englishness to Farewell to Kings, especially because of the pastoral and that sort of thing. It's recorded in Wales, of course. And even in brief moments, Geddy sounds English, if that makes sense. He even does that on live. This is a very English photograph, is it not? Let me go this way, right? I love it. I think it's very English. So I think that was their way to, an homage to English art rock, right? Art/prog rock. So wonderful, right? So after you get all these all sorts, the wood blocks, the chimes, all the things that Neil decided to pull out in his kit, he's got these long tubular bell-like things. They're just chimes, I guess, but they have different notes because they're different lengths, and he hits them with his little hammer, right? Just great, he has that. And then after you get the birds chirping, you get this subtle guitar that comes in. It's layered here with slow synthesizers, the notes of a slow synthesizer. And then you have the bells or the chimes from Neil hitting the hammer on those things, right? And then you get this wind sound, and then you get this shift to this synth hum, right? And then you get some classical sounding keys with the guitar rising from that, right? This is all a slow build-up. And then you get more wind sounds, and then you get intermittent drums in and out. And then you get the main part of the song. You get the drums, the guitar, and the bass. The main motif of the song kicks in. Everything here is exquisite. Okay, I cannot describe everything in much of this album because it's just so complex. You have some soft, quiet elements, and then you get some heavy, subtle but heavy stuff back and forth here. You have these varying motifs throughout the whole epic here, which I won't go into to describe. There are so many, and that is the rule of the day for both of these albums. You have these long pieces, even some of the shorter pieces, they're so complex, even if they're short, because you have all these return to previous sounds we've heard, those motifs, right? And so there's just a big palette going on here, and I love it. And then you finally get some vocals from Geddy, and so the narrator, or the role that Geddy has stepped in, we've talked about this before with 2112 and what have you, and Fountain of Lamnath on Caress of Steel. Here the narrator protagonist is excited. He's enthusiastic about, and he can't wait to dine on honeydew and be in paradise and reach his destination, the pleasure dome that Kubla Khan built, hence the beginning of Coleridge's poem. And you get that emphasis by the way that Geddy is stressing the words, his phrasing, and you get these infinitives: to walk, right? To this, to that, and of course to walk these caves of ice, that sort of thing. So it's upbeat, right? Because he's excited. But then everything changes. This is in many ways, this song is, and I've talked about this before, in many ways this is a reworking of the Fountain of Lamnath, because it's dealing with the pains of immortality, the curse of immortality. It's not what I expected, it's not what I wanted. I got what I paid for, though. So eventually you get this upbeat part because he's excited, enthusiastic, but then when you hear Geddy ring out in vocals, Prison of the Lost, Xanadu, there's that shift. Geddy's vocals, regardless if he's enthusiastic or the protagonist realizing what he's done, negative now, this is some of his best work here. The way that when he sings Xanadu and he stretches that one word, Xana, and he prolongs the do part, just great. And then, of course, it gets negative because he says, to taste my bitter triumph as a mad, immortal man. It's all negative now. He realizes what he's done. He's no longer, the protagonist here is no longer enthusiastic. He's not anxious in a good way. He's anxious in a bad way because it's now an anxiety. Well, oh my God, what have I done, right? It's moody, it's mournful. You have this bluesy, medieval, heavy guitar to reaffirm that what have I done vocal. So Alex is playing the guitar to reaffirm what the protagonist is going through. Just a great song. I love the song. Next is Closer to the Heart. And as I said, A Farewell to Kings Part 2, because the title of the song is the last line of the first song. And this song is about Dharma, that in many ways, that Hindu belief that everyone has a special talent and therefore everyone has a certain place in society. And therefore you should appreciate your role, that talent that you've been given, and don't waste it. Whether you're a philosopher, a lawman, a teacher, and even though some of these professions aren't mentioned, does that mean you can't change? No, but it's interesting to think that it's kind of like the trees in the sense that everyone's different, but we're all special in some way because we have a unique talent. So dealing with that, it's a how to live your life. It's great advice, and in many ways, I think the song foreshadows what's to come in Hemispheres, because you have part of the lyrics are closer to the heart. It's singing about, let's get back to the heart, our emotions. You have to have a heart. You have to have sympathy, empathy, all these wonderful things. And of course, Hemispheres is dealing with the battle between the heart and the mind, the balance of the heart and the mind. So in many ways, thematically foreshadowing what's going on in that song, especially the last part of Hemispheres, the sphere, a kind of dream, right? Which is beautiful. Next in this album is Cinderella Man. Great acoustic guitar, great lyrics. It's moving. One of my favorite solos from Alex of all time. It's a song about a quiet, dreaming outlier. Follow your dreams. Pacing of the song, musically, Geddy's phrasing is just fabulous, I think. I think it's an underrated song. This song, of all the songs on this album, from start to finish, has the most English feel to it in many ways. Yeah, Farewell to Kings has the pastoral stuff and some other parts of Xanadu, right? But this has the most English feel, maybe tied with the next song. Yeah, maybe. I think this song was in many ways inspired, not only by the movie, I forget that this song's based on, but Someone Goes to Washington, but I think it's inspired by Genesis, if you had to ask me. And for some reason, and I can't put my finger on it, this song also, though it doesn't sound like it, something about it reminds me of Circumstances on Hemispheres. Next is Madrigal. It's a type of poem, that a certain format to write a poem in. It's dreamy, it's pastoral. You have the mention of a dragon, so you get that medieval sensibility again. It's great. It's very Genesis-like in a way, kind of. It's rushed, but it just makes me think of Genesis in some way because of that pastoral. It's a romance, chivalry, killing the dragon. The pen is mightier than the sword. A friend of mine, I don't hear it, but a friend of mine in high school said there was a brief moment where listening to the song, when I played it for him, the vocals reminded him of Dennis DeYoung with Styx. I don't hear that, but I just throw that out there. Let me know if you think you hear some of that in this song. Nowhere else he said, but in this song for some reason. He said for a brief moment towards the end, but I don't hear it. Madrigal sometimes gets passed as fluff or a deep cut that no one listens to, or a filler. I love it. I think it's different from the rest of the album because there's nothing heavy about it, and yet it still fits because it's very English, as I said, and it just works with the rest of the album. And where it fits in the track listing, I think is just amazing because it's leading up to the glory, the beautiful, the heaviness that is Cygnus X1 Book 1. Let's talk about that. I get chills right off the bat. You have that opening. It's not exactly like the opening to 2112, but of course you get, because of the song, you get the feeling that you're floating through space along with the astronaut in question, that sort of thing. And you get that creepy voice, right? In the constellation of Cygnus, kind of similar to the creepy voice in Necromancer. I don't know if it's Neil again. I want to say it's Hugh Simon this time doing the narration, but don't quote me on that. I used to sing in the house as a kid, and my mom's like, "What the hell is that? What are you singing? What constellation are you talking? What do you do?" Like, "It's Rush, Mom." She's like, "Oh, okay, forget it." She understood then. I'm not gonna read all that, but you get my point. It's a creepy voice. Then you get that piercing split. That I don't know how to describe the noise, but you get this kind of thing after that narration, and then you get the bells and the chimes again, and then you hear the spacecraft taking off. It's really cool and creepy at the same time. Then more bells, and then you get this da-da-da-da-da kind of sound. Then the bass motif comes in. Dun dun da dun 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 da dun. It's fun to play too, I must say. And then it starts out really way back in the mix, and then slowly but surely it keeps coming to the front of the mix. It's as if Geddy's in another room or rooms way back, and then he's walking towards us, right? It's great. And then you get this jazzy bit, right? It's just phenomenal. I remember playing this for a friend of mine. He's like, "That's jazz, man." I'm like, yeah, it is, isn't it? And of course, excuse me, this foreshadows the next album because you have some jazzy bits in La Via Strangiato. And you get while the bass bang down is going on, right, and the jazz, Neil just going away at the drum kit, right, you still have the bells and the space noises in the background. Eventually they fade away because it's taken over by the guitar motif that pops up, and so now you have all three instruments, and then you just have some amazing motifs in this album. There's just so many of them, which I won't go over one by one. It gets too complex to do that. And then you get this impending doom noise, which I can't describe, but it's kind of like a uh-oh moment, right, from the music. And then perch drums are just wow. And the synths here are bone-chilling in a good way. They're just awesome. And then finally you get vocals from Geddy at the 5 minute, almost exactly 5 minute mark, if not exactly at the 5 minute mark. And Geddy is just fantastic here. And his voice here blends with Alex's raging and angst-ridden guitar. And then you get this shift later on. After that, you get this shift because Geddy says the word soar, and you hear it echoed, soar to soar to soar, right? And then I would sing this part too, and my mom's like, "What the hell are you singing?" Right? I'm a teenager. And then you hear the word Rocinante, which is the donkey in Don Quixote that Don Quixote rides. And so a literary nerd like me goes to town with something like that, right? Well, I won't go into why and all that, the symbolism, but you also have a little bit of other allusions to literature when Geddy sings that the black hole is his siren song. So now we're talking about an allusion to the Odyssey. And then you get this quiet part, the whole band, and it's back in the mix. You have the wind that returns, the whoo, right? Again, right, so remind you the winds of space, right? And then you get the bass and drums that comes in again, and the bells and the chimes again, and then all three of the gentlemen come in, and you get this heavy guitar. And Geddy's really hitting the high register here, spinning, whirling, still descending like a spiral sea, and then he belts on ending, just amazing. And then the guitar is really, the guitar is, the way that Alex plays the guitar here, and the bass and the drums and the singing, it's like a whirlpool. That's how, I don't know how else to describe it. But it reminds, and of course, whirlpool makes us think of black hole. So the lyrics and the music are imitating what's transpiring in the story, right? That's how I read. And then there's kind of a galloping after that, right? That's real that gets jazzy, right? And then of course, Geddy sings, "Sound and fury draw my heart." The drums and again come in. Sound and fury draw my heart. And then I forget the last line. Torn apart, right? Sound and fury draws my heart, every nerve is torn apart. And then it says, too small, but it says to be continued. And it is. But before the song ends, Geddy's vocals are gone at this point, but then you get this heartbeat, right? And then you also hear the da-da-da-da, the acoustic guitar comes. So you get this heartbeat sound along with Alex's acoustic guitar. And chills. Well, see the hair standing on end just talking about that, if you can see that. This song is a masterpiece. This whole album is a masterpiece. This is just phenomenal. I'm looking up at my camera here and I already see that I'm 23 minutes in, so this is going to be the longest one I've done so far. Anyway, so let's talk about deep breath. Let's talk about Hemispheres now. So Hemispheres begins with Hemispheres Cygnus X1 Book 2. So this one literally picks up where the previous album left off because it's the part 2 of Cygnus X1. When I first heard this as a teenager, I was at first disappointed because I'm like, okay, Apollo and Dionysus, where's the astronaut at, dude? And then the music was much different. Where's the ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum, dun, dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun, where is all that stuff, right? It's not here. There's going to be quick bits of that later, but they're too brief. I still love the song, mind you. It took me a third or fourth listen to really appreciate the song, and now I play it all the time. So the opening as a teenager was not what I thought it would be. I thought that a better way to begin the song would be to pick up where the original left off with the heartbeat in the acoustic, but that comes later. And we understand why, because they're trying to tell a story. And we understand why, because it's the middle part, right? All right, I don't want to give that away, but you understand what I'm talking about because you know the song. Now, this is a very long song. It's 18 minutes and change, so I'm not going to talk about every little nuance here and every little nuance there. But I'll say a few things because they're noteworthy. So you have 3 or more musical motifs here that they come and then return to it, right? Now, this song, with respect to flow, doesn't flow as well as 2112. It kind of suffers from the same problem that Fountain of Lamneth suffers from. So if you know that song, you have the da-da, da-da, da-da-da-da between each song, or give or take a few of the songs, or parts of the song, excuse me. Here, you don't have that same motif between each bit, but some of the songs like the Apollo piece and the Dionysus piece begin the same way, but it's a little choppy. I do love the song, mind you, but I do have a few criticisms about it, but I do love the song, as I said. And then there's one little drum piece that Neil repeats over and over that's a little underwhelming, and I don't want to imitate it, but anyway. But so I digress. The song contains all the hallmarks. This is what's great about the song. The song contains all the hallmarks you want and expect from a band like Rush during this prog period, right? The lyrics are fantastic. They're just downright phenomenal. The theme is amazing. The story, the meaning behind all this, that there are limitations to certain modes of thinking, and that you need balance between logic, which is reason, and emotion, right? Heart and mind. Gotta have that, or you're gonna live a miserable life, right? The first solo from Alex is just fantastic. And this is after Geddy sings or says, "In search of Dionysus." And then, wow, it's blistering, it's fabulous. And then you have that motif of Neil's drums, which I tried to imitate it here in it's saying it's not going to work, but anyway. And you get the synthesizer and the Moog and the Taurus pedals that come in after that solo. It's just fabulous. Then it shifts to a second guitar solo from Alex, which is quite different, but very compelling as well. It's brief, but I love it. It's meant, I think, to imitate the journey of this piece, and that is when, and the meaning as well, when Geddy belts "The universe divided," etc. And then there's another shift when, and here's where we get going with the understanding how this connects to part 1, because it's not until Geddy says "My Rocinante" that we're going, okay, here's the connection. Where's this all leading to? How is this part 2, right? So Geddy sings "My Rocinante," and if there's more lyrics that follow, and then the synths that come in after that foreshadows, in many ways, I think, Permanent Waves and Moving Pictures. We're getting a preview of what's to come synthesizer-wise for those 2 albums to a small degree. And then the motif from part 1 of the song, way back at the beginning of the song, returns, and you get that drum motif, which I want to imitate, but I can't. And then you get that acoustic piece from the beginning of the song return. So motifs galore in this piece. And way back in the mix, you have this ethereal sound, and then you get this jazzy bit here after that. And then you get, finally, the return of the astronaut. I have memory and awareness, but I have no shape or form. As a disembodied spirit, I am dead and yet I'm born. I have traveled to Olympus, etc., etc. This is very moving. This is where I'm really starting to enjoy the song even more. I love what comes before, but this is really, I'm really, when my motor is seriously running here. So he describes Olympus as marble white and purest gold. Geddy sings that most beautifully. Then you get some more ethereal sounds and then flashes of lightning. Geddy comes in again. He's soft, but then once he says, "I feel a silent scream inside," he begins to wail again. It gets heavy, right? It's great. Then we get a third solo from Alex, which is exquisite. And then, of course, I get goosebumps thinking about this. Then you get the part where the astronaut becomes the god Cygnus because that title was bestowed upon him by Apollo and Dionysus. And they say, "We will call you Cygnus, the god of balance, you shall be." Chills. And then the original motif from the beginning of the song returns, that introduces the piece. And then you have a shift in the arrangement of the song. Another motif from before. There's so many, I forget which one, it's hard to describe. There's some unwinding, and then finally you have that echoing gong that simmers for a little bit. It just doesn't come and go like Queen at Bohemian Rhapsody. It's a little longer lasting. And then you finally get the last part of the song called The Sphere. It's a beautiful acoustic piece. Alongside Tears on 2112, this is probably Geddy's best beautifully vocal performance. He sings beautifully here. And the message and the meaning is just beautiful as well. So the music is beautiful, the message is beautiful, the theme is beautiful. Message is fantastic. I love this piece. This whole album is wonderful. And there would be something missing if Cygnus X1 Hemispheres Book 2 did not end with this soft bit. It sends the message home. What is this song about? Here it is. Have to combine the heart and mind for a perfect sphere. And that's the connection to Closer to the Heart on the first album. See, album pairs, right? All right, side 2, Circumstances. The music is oxymoronic in the sense that it's light yet heavy at the same time. It's hard to describe. Geddy, as you know, had to sing really high for this piece because of the way the music was written. He talks about that in 1 or 2 or 3 interviews. It's a shorter piece. I like it a lot. They didn't play this live enough, if you ask me. The bass that's low in the mix is quite nice. The chorus is heavy vocally speaking. It's a great deep cut, if you ask me. And I like the French bits as well here, the small French lyrics. Finally, we come to the trees. Well, not finally, we come to the trees, the penultimate song on the album. You have a great acoustic intro. It's just beautiful. It's an allegory, of course, for us humans. One of the themes is that death is the great equalizer. It's a light and shade song. You have the opening lyrics, "The Trouble with the Maples," right? I won't go into it, but there are different ways, even opposite ways, to interpret the lyrics. I used to teach this to my students. I would give them the lyrics, and I had some beautiful interpretations for my students over the last 20-something years. Anyway, but I won't go into all that. And the instrumental piece of this song is my favorite part, whether we're talking Here or Alive, which foreshadows in many ways, I think, Jacob's Ladder. You have this light pastoral part that shifts to a slightly more heavier sound here in the instrumental piece, as I call it heavy pastoral. Then you get the bass solo, which is just great, which segues into Alex's guitar solo, which, if you ask me, would fit right in with the Farewell to Kings. It has that same mood, vibe, atmosphere. And finally, we come to one of Rush's masterpiece, if not, as far as instrumentals go, magnum opus, if not their magnum opus of all time. In many ways, there are days where I think that, and that is La Via Strangiato, roughly translated, The Strange Village, a song written because of Alex's nightmares while touring. And there's a section from here, or sections, because it's reprised, that they took or accidentally took. They eventually paid money to the person that they borrowed or accidentally got from. It was, who knows how they got it, an earworm, who knows. So they borrowed a part of the song from a 1937 instrumental called Powerhouse by Raymond Scott, which made its way into many a Looney Tunes cartoon. So, like I said, they eventually paid royalties to Raymond Scott or his estate, probably his estate, since it's a 1937 song. So this song, as you know, has some jazz moments to it, a little bit of swing, if you ask me. I would call it heavy jazz. There's that bluesy heavy metal solo at the 3.5 minute mark. I'll come to that. The opening acoustic part has a classical / flamenco flair to it. On the live version, which I prefer, it's actually soft for a minute, but then there's Alex shredding his heart out, and then it goes into the jazzy bit before you get the real cool solo at the 3.5 minute mark. So anyway, it opens with that acoustic classical flamenco piece. Then the synthesizers come in. Then you get Neil's chimes sporadically. Then it picks up to a heavier guitar sound from Alex, and then Neil's drums introduce my favorite guitar solo from Alex of all time at the 3.5 minute mark, where he's just crying his heart out. I've never heard the guitar cry like this in my entire life, and have yet to hear anything parallel or comparable to this. And what's great about the solo is not only does Alex seem to put his heart and soul and mind into this solo, as if it's him crying, right? There's multiple gears to this. Just when it's just amazing. You think he's reached the height of the solo. No, he's got another gear, and then he's not got another gear, and then he's got another gear. It's just amazing. There are like 3 or 4 gears to this brief solo. And then you get the jazzy solo after that with the mini moog, and then the guitar comes in again. Then you get the main motif, dun 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 dun. That's the Looney Tunes thing that they purloined or borrowed or what have you, or accidentally, was stuck in their head, that subconsciously got into their music, right? And then the bass solo comes in, that's brief, Geddy's just phenomenal. And then you get the jazz bits again, and then you get another solo from Alex. It's more of a stuttering style technique, kind of I don't want to say Ace Frehley-ish, but it's kind of an Ace Frehley-ish, but Alex doing it. It's an Alex, right, song. Piece. It just makes me think of Ace a little bit for some reason. But then it turns into a full-blown treading type solo. And then the part after that, which I won't try to imitate, parallels something about a part in Hemispheres, the song Hemispheres, somehow in some way, but I can't put my finger on it. And then you get this slightly heavy boogie piece, if I'm describing that correctly. And then the jazz motif returns, which has a Middle Eastern feel to it. So we're kind of back to that Caress of Steel tone vibe that Alex has on parts of Fountain of Lemneth and Necromancer. And then it goes into high gear again with heavy synths again. And then you get the repetition of dun 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 dun, and then it ends with that little bitty flourish. And what's interesting is that there are 12 parts to the song, and part 12, the final part, is called A Farewell to Things. So see this as a pun or incremental repetition lyrically. Either way, it's fun. It's sort of fun, right? Quirky. What a great way to name the piece, because it makes us think of this. So yes, these are album pairs, and I just love them. These are so part of my DNA that I could talk about these forever. Anyway, here they are again. You know them well if you're a Rush fan, right? 2 of the greatest albums of all time. One of the greatest album pairs of all time by my favorite band of all time. Please tell me what you think of these 2 wonderful seminal works in the comments below if you get a chance. And if you could please hit the like and subscribe button to help this young channel grow. Thank you so much for watching. God bless. Take care now. Bye.